My husband entered the service at the age of 17 years old as he graduated high school. My husband, Mario, was a very small statured man and did not meet the height or the weight to get into the service. But he didn't, it was World War II, and he did not want to give up. So he kept going back and back until they finally said to him, look, we see that you are determined to get into the service, so stamp you're in the service. So when he went into boot camp, he got a very serious foot infection. And in boot camp, that landed him in the hospital. And so the way they treated his foot fungus back in those days was to stick his feet in formaldehyde. So they burned his feet on a regular basis. I don't know how often the treatment was, but it was very often that they literally burned his feet with formaldehyde. And so when they thought that it was cured, the young man that he joined in the service with, his high school friend, they were sent to the USS Enterprise right in the middle of the war. My husband joined the war in 1944, and he spent his entire career in the service on the USS Enterprise when it was the only ship, or it was the only ship for quite a while in the Pacific, because all of the ships at that time were destroyed in Hawaii in World War II. And his ship had just left Hawaii to go out to sea when all the other ships were destroyed during the attack on Pearl Harbor. So my husband fought in the South Pacific on the USS Enterprise, and he also experienced kamikaze attacks of the USS Enterprise, which his friend was vaporized when the plane flew into tub number 4. And all of the soldiers were killed that were in tub number 4. My husband was less than 100 feet away from the attack and the explosion, and so all the debris and everything and asbestos from that ship fell and rained down on him. But that was one of his trauma experiences in World War II, was, in the war. And that was one major trauma experience, watching his high school friend vaporized in that attack. He also fought from the ship, fighting the planes in Okinawa and Iwo Jima. He fought both at those battles, and he fought from the ship, fighting the planes that were flying over, attacking, plus shooting mortar onto the island. It was a very traumatic experience. Another traumatic experience was both on Okinawa and Iwo Jima. He buried, on Okinawa, were 12,000 men that were on that island during the battle, and there were only 1,083 men that survived. And one of my husband's traumatic experiences were cleaning up, detail on Okinawa, cleaning up all the body parts and stuff, body parts of the men that were blown to bits in Okinawa, as well as Iwo Jima. And that's where he developed an eating disorder, where he could not physically eat. He ate, but he had a very serious eating disorder, because he explained to me while doing that detail, the stench of the rotting bodies was so overwhelming that they could not eat in mess hall because the stench was so bad. So that's where he developed his eating disorder. Also, he had infected with him his entire life was a hygiene. He wanted to stay. He didn't drink water. He didn't want to drink water, and he did not want to bathe in water. So it was like when I got my husband to care for him. It was like fighting with a child to get him to take a bath, but he wasn't going to win over me. So I kept him clean and everything. But his daughter told me that was a whole thing when she was caring for him during his elder years, and also growing up. He did not want to take showers or baths on a regular basis. And he had always had the problem where he didn't want to eat. He would only want to eat spaghetti with maybe butter on it. That was the only meal, pasta with butter. One of the things that he would eat. But they would eat. His wife would cook meals. The children would eat, but no, he didn't want to eat. So he's always been a small, petite man and continued to be a small, petite man throughout his life because of the eating disorder. Really, PTSD really wasn't an issue until, I believe, the 80s when the 80s, I think it was the 80s when the VA recognized PTSD syndrome. Before they called it something like gun shy or gun shock or something like that. They called it, and really didn't recognize it. But when my husband was discharged from service, he was discharged with a medical discharge. But all throughout the years, I guess my husband didn't really know the formalities of giving his benefits. So he would write into, I've seen letters on his file back from the early, from the 40s, where he wrote to VA explaining the difficulties that he had, and he needed help, and he was always denied. My husband did not receive disability benefits. If you're a vet, you can get medical care through the VA. And I took him to the VA hospital in Las Vegas, and that's where I signed him up for the VA medical care. And at that time, he was 92 years of age. And then by being there, they told me, oh, he may qualify for VA benefits, so take him down to the VSO, and see if he can apply for VA benefits. And I did, and we met a wonderful officer there that went and was able to pull his records, and indeed he said, yes, he qualified for benefits because he obviously has a extent of medical records here where he was even discharged with a medical discharge, and he filed for everything under the book to help us, and he was first awarded at a 70% disability, and he started getting a check from the VA from 2019 when he was at 70%, his first award. He didn't get 100% disability until 2020, probably the last part of 2022 or 20, probably like 2023. I think it was 2023, but they dated him back to 2021. When we finally got awarded, his VA 100% was probably like early 2023, but they dated it back to June of 2021. My husband's ship was loaded with asbestos, and the fact that my husband's career was, his job title was Fireman First Class. Indeed, asbestos. And the fact that he worked in the boiler room and he worked as where they take the water and convert it to drinking water and that kind of stuff. Indeed, more asbestos. So my husband had a great amount of exposure to asbestos. But after talking to you, I found out even though he was exposed to asbestos, he had no asbestos injury or illness. He did not suffer from any kind of breathing problems. He did not have any kind of cancer, except he did have prostate cancer in his 50s or 40s or 50s, and they had surgery and cured it. So he didn't have, when they removed his prostate back then, he didn't have any more prostate cancer. So that was not going to be, I thought it was just being exposed to asbestos, not proving that he had asbestos-related illness. I would say the process is to wear you down. That's the process. And in order to, I would give this message to vets as well who are trying to file for disability claim in the first place. You have to be persistent. It's not going to be an instant process. It's going to be months, and it's going to be years before you get, qualified. I think what you have to do is you have to be as persistent as they are in denying you. And when they deny you, you have to refile. You have to, just keep going at it. Just keep opening up the claim. They kept denying me aid in attendance, okay? It's just that I ran out of time before I could find out the truth. I could have been getting aid in attendance and compensation for caring for my husband back in 2020. We filed for initial back in 2019. But the thing about this is they should have qualified my husband at 100% from the time we first filed. I found out that they don't ever give initial 100% qualification, 100% disability when you first file. My husband qualified for disability back in the 40s, and because he kept being denied, he gave up. And it wasn't until 2019 when he finally got his medical disability. And like I said, they initially gave me help in caring for him in Las Vegas. It depends on what facility that you applied for, okay? The care that my husband got just because he was a World War II veteran and the fact that he was on the USS Enterprise, the most decorated ship in World War II, in Las Vegas, he was respected. When I came to Long Beach, they could care less. It depends on the facility that you're working with. It depends on the people that you're working with trying to get help for a vet. It's so many circumstances that's in your way denying you. You just have to go, when you get denied from this person, you have to go file again until somebody sees the issue and approve you. It could take you years, but you have to be persistent. And to know that my husband was at medical discharge, and it took to the age of 92 before he was finally approved for disability, and not even at 100%. He was only approved for 70%. We didn't get approval of 100% disabled until, like I said, about a year and a half before he passed away. Mm-hmm. So from 92 to 97, that's 5 years right there. Just to get from 70% to 100%.